Welcome to the 10th show of Speak Up, the television show of the New Zealand Freemasons. I am Barry Rushton, your host, and if you've been a regular viewer of this program, you will be surprised at our first guest. After our first guest will be a father and son duo, originally from South Africa but now living in New Zealand, and do they have some tales to tell? And concluding the show will be our regular contributor, Graham Houston, who will be speaking on the life of another famous Freemason. As I said in the introduction, this is a show of first. I would like to introduce you to my guest, Carol Reeves. Carol, it is a delight to have you here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Barry.
Now, you see, obviously Carol is not a Freemason, but she is a member of an independent body organisation called the Chapter or the Order of the Eastern Star. I've always wanted to know what the Order of the Eastern Star was about, Carol, so welcome to the show. Tell us about the Order of the Eastern Star.
The Order of the Eastern Star was actually formed in America in 1850 by a gentleman called Mr. Morris, who was a Freemason. He found it very difficult to be going off to his lodge all the time and associating with the men, and no women were included. So he decided to form a similar type of organisation which runs along similar lines to the Freemasons, and he called it the Order of the Eastern Star.
You know, it's funny that you did talk about the fact that no women have been involved. That's a question that we still get asked today. Why aren't women involved? And when you look back on it, there's probably no great reason, but it is historical, that when Freemasonry started in 1717, it was a men's club and they all got together and they say, and to be quite frank, men are a bit silly when women are involved in things, you know, so maybe that's a good reason for you to stay home and use the television remote. But in actual fact, so 1850, Dr. Morrissey started, right? And it was the Masons set up a college over there, and they got him to actually be the teacher over there. And in that period of time, right, he thought, what can we do to have a chapter going? And he created the whole ritual and the whole thing, didn't he?
Yes, he did, yes.
So the structure in the Order of the Eastern Star is what? How does that work?
Well, for a chapter, it requires 18.
18?
Yes.
Ooh, that's a
and
few.
their positions are worthy matron, who's
Right.
the head of the chapter, worthy patron, who is the head brother in the chapter, associate matron, associate patron, secretary, treasurer,
And
chaplain, and finally the warder and sentinel.
now, see, they're interesting positions, and we'll come back to the points. I'd like to talk about those in a second. So the whole structure was I always thought it was a woman's organisation only, but obviously it's not. It's women and men together, and they have to be together, at least the top two, anyway, for a meeting or a chapter to have its meeting, correct?
Yes, they do.
But the worthy matron, she is always the boss, right?
Yes, she is. She has the ultimate lead in the chapter.
Great. And you and the way that you conduct your meetings is very similar, I believe, to a general sort of Masonic meeting. You have your business session and so on and so forth, correct?
Much the same as the Freemasons, I believe.
I believe that's true too. Now, again, in New Zealand for a long period of time, the Freemasons of New Zealand, they didn't. Well, there were men who joined your chapters, but they did it sort of behind closed doors, right? The New Zealand Constitution members didn't like to be associated that much.
No.
That's right. But that did change, right?
Yes, it changed in 1973.
Right.
During the communications of the New Zealand Freemasons, they investigated the Order of the Eastern Star, and they gave it the go-ahead for the New Zealand Masons to join us.
Great. And so it was really quite popular for a period of time, correct?
Yes, it was, yes.
But like lots of things, things have sort of waned a tad, right?
Yes, sadly, I think it's just the way life is today, really. People don't want to belong to these things. I think society has changed a lot with families, and people don't feel inclined to give time to organisations like always happened before.
I would think that there was also a little bit of not a stumbling block, but the hurdles to join were quite significant too, weren't they?
Oh, it was very, very restrictive, yes. You had to be very closely related to a Mason who had passed through the 3 degrees before you could apply for membership in the Order of the Eastern Star. That was like a wife, a sister, a mother, daughter, and it started and finished there, which made it very, very difficult.
Wow.
Because along the way there were some very, very good people who would have loved to have joined, but they just did not qualify. For many, many years we tried to get it changed, and it's only just in the last 5 years that Scotland has agreed to change it in New Zealand, but it's a little bit too late in many respects now.
Okay. Now, I should say, of course, is that it's the Order of the Eastern Star is still going. It's strong in America, it's strong in Australia and Scotland.
Yes.
In New Zealand, however, Auckland did have about 6 chapters at one stage, but and sadly all of those are now closed. Is that correct?
Yes. I belong to Glenavon chapter. We met at New Lynn, and that closed 4 years ago.
Wow.
But there are still 2 chapters operating in Wellington. Caledonia chapter number 293, which was actually my mother chapter,
Right.
which I joined in 1973, and the other one is Porirua chapter.
Fantastic.
So those 2 chapters work very closely together.
Both in Wellington, right?
Yes.
Now tell me, Carol, obviously you loved it. I mean, you became the worthy matron.
Yes, I did.
And when was that? About
1999. I was the Millennium Matron.
Oh, the Millennium one, which you would have loved that.
Yes.
Tell us why, I know you loved it. Why did you love it? I know it was more than just social, there was lots of stuff involved.
Yes, I think it's really the people who make up the chapter, and you're all working for that same goal, to look after the members, as we say in part of our ritual, the widow and orphan, and anybody who needs assistance who is in the chapter. And I think that's a very big thing. It is really like joining a big family.
Yeah.
And you're working towards the same goal of raising funds to pass on to charities.
Great.
The worthy matron, when she gets elected into the chair each year, she chooses which charity we're going to be working for that year.
Right.
So we have lots of social engagements and little afternoon teas or dinners or potluck meals and outings, and we raise money during that year for her chapter.
Right, great. So you joined yourself in 1973, right?
Yes.
So you would have been still quite young at that time.
Yes, I was. Yes, I had a young family. Yes.
Which is terrific. And so did you find then that as times went on, the younger people were not joining? Was there sort of just a slow decline out of your chapter?
Yes, there was really, yes.
Okay. And anything you tried to do didn't seem to make a big difference?
No, I think it was really because most of the membership were older people who had the time to give it.
Yeah.
And so anybody young who came in felt a little bit out of place.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So I guess you miss it.
I do miss it very much, yes.
Yeah,
it was a big part of my life.
Too hard to jump on the train and go down to Wellington?
Yes, well, I do try and get down for meetings, but it's not always possible all the time.
Before we go, Carol, I just thought it was quite interesting that the originator, and I'll call him originator, Dr. Rob Morris, he was actually a lawyer and a doctor in philosophy, funnily enough.
Yes.
He was so well known, in the sense that in about 1886, on the backing of about 50,000 Masons, they voted him as the poet laureate of Masonry. He was only the second person after Robbie Burns. And Robbie Burns was the first one.
Yeah.
And Rob Morris wrote over 300 poems. People said that what Washington was to liberty, Lincoln was to equality, Morris was to Freemasonry.
Yes.
Now that's fantastic.
That is fantastic, yes, I agree.
Well, it may be, and as time goes on, it may be that Freemasonry as a men's organisation will have women members. I know they are starting to do it in other places around the world, like France and a few others. Whether or not it comes to New Zealand is another thing, But it has been great having you on,
Thank you
Carol.
so much.
It's been terrific.
Thank you
for being a great guest today. I appreciate you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Another first for Speak Up. Our second guests, not guests, but guests, are a father and son duo. Welcome, Ellen. Nice to see you. Lawrence, terrific. Sorry, guys. All Blacks got you this time. I know you squeaked in the first time, but we got our revenge. True?
Yeah.
Welcome to the show, you guys. It's great to have you here.
Thanks.
So our listeners here, this is 2 men from used to live in South Africa. I have never been to South Africa, but amongst Freemasons, there are a number of South Africans who have joined the lodge. We'll talk about the lodge thing at some stage, but I am really intrigued about your country, and I know that you grew up in Cape Town. Cape Town looks fabulous.
It's a fantastic. South Africa is a fantastic country. Cape Town,
It's the jewel, isn't it?
it's the jewel,
Yeah, that's right.
and beautiful scenery, the seas, the mountain. If you lived there, you wouldn't want to leave.
Well, I did a little bit of imaging, looking the other night, and gee, that tabletop mountain and that Clifton Beach, I mean, and the city itself just looks so clean. It just looks so beautiful.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the best parts of the city and of Cape Town. Going up there, like you said, Table Mountain, and then the city straight into it, and the beaches that sit along the back, and then you go all the way up to what they call Cape Point, further up. Or the beaches and the great whites in the water as well, something if you want, but if you're looking for something a bit more extreme. But yeah, it's definitely something, growing up there, you're used to it, and when you travel the world or go somewhere else, you realise it, but hold on, everywhere else doesn't just naturally have all this beauty, have the great beaches and everything else.
You've lived in South Africa, and of course it's like if you're living in an area, things don't necessarily seem to be potentially as bad or as good as they could be.
And you learn to adapt. And you learn to take precautions in what you do. That's why I've always said, and I still say it today, if anybody wants to go on a holiday to Cape Town, go to Cape Town, you'll have a fantastic time. But go around with a local, a person that knows what goes on.
And where to go.
And where to go and where not to go and how to conduct yourself. You'll have a holiday of a lifetime.
There's a couple of stories I know that you're going to tell me in a minute because I've heard a little bit of them before. It's a funny thing about life and about us that we don't want to chase the fire engine, but we're sort of keen to see where it goes,
Yes.
But there's always something about, like a car wreck. People look at the car wreck, they just can't help themselves. So there are some stories that you had back in your time in South Africa, right?
Yes.
Some of them are. You escaped one time by the skin of your teeth, didn't you?
Yes.
Tell me about that one.
Somebody must have been looking after me. We used to do a transport money that was unscheduled pickup. So what they would do at the bulk banks, they would pack the money in the morning. The payout, it was unemployment benefits that we used to pay out. The payout was at a fixed time. But I used to pick the money up in my motor vehicle because it was a difficult run and the armoured vehicles were busy at that time. And it was only once a month. So I used to pick it up any time before the pickup. So there was no scheduled time for me to pick it up. It would be ready. I went across to pick the money up that days, and it's
quite a bit of money too, right?
1.5 mil, it's about 150,000 today.
That's right, the 1 rand to 10
cents. Two managers were there and they were bored. They were sitting in the office and they said, "We'll do the run for you today." So they loaded the money, got in their vehicle, and as they drove out the premises, the security premises, the first set of traffic lights, they were blocked off with a motor vehicle, and guys got out with guns. The driver was shot, he was killed. The assistant was shot 4 times from the front seat to the back seat. And in their haste with the keys, they couldn't open the boots. So they did not get the money.
Oh, didn't they?
They didn't get the money.
Wow.
Because it was within a minute from our base. And it was radio comms, and they could hear the shooting in the control room.
So they scarfed it, did they?
Yeah, but what happened there, somebody in our control had to say the car is leaving now.
Yeah. Well, you were smiled over on that
So
day.
I got out of jail there.
Boom. You had another time too, didn't you, when you were sort of going on somewhere that you found someone in the swimming pool?
Yes, we used to do repossessed properties from the bank.
Yep.
We would alarm the properties, and we'd have arm response call-outs when the alarm was triggered. I was in charge of that contract as well. And one day there was a burglar alarm, and I happened to be close. They sent out the arm response, but I happened to be in the area as well. And always being armed, I responded to the property. Got there, walked around, and had a look around, and it looked like the back door, somebody had to try to fiddle, and that had set off the alarm. But while I was there, I thought, let me do an inspection of the property. It was a large property. I walked around and had a swimming pool at the back of the property. But this property, unattended, the pool water had gone green already. So,
Yeah,
the water's green in the pool,
Yeah, yeah.
nobody's cleaning. And I walked around, and I saw something floating,
Someone.
in the green water. And I took the cleaning rod and what have you, and I went and I
Had a poke around.
had a poke around, and I saw this body floating in the pool
Yeah, it's-
with a big gash in the forehead.
Wow.
So and, went down, waited for the armed response to
Sure.
my guy to come there, let him stand by, went down and reported it. To cut a long story short, it seemed like this guy had come into the property, had been drinking, there was alcohol involved, had walked to the back, didn't know the pool was there, had slipped and fallen and hit his head
Bam. And drowned.
and drowned.
Boom. Youch. I mean, heck, I'm sure there's lots of those stories. Now, the interesting part about why you both are here is because you've both joined a lodge together in New Zealand. Before we talk about that, did you have any idea about sort of how big Freemasonry is in South Africa? Or did you have any inkling over there that you thought that you'd like to join Freemasonry over there before you came to New Zealand, either of you?
Not
personally. No.
Not
at
in
all?
South Africa. It's always been something out there, but I didn't pay much attention to it in South Africa.
Right, right. So when you got to New Zealand, you were here first and then you came. So it's only recent, you've only both joined, about a matter of a couple of years ago, isn't it?
Yeah,
When did you?
June 2007.
17.
17.
17, yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
thought. So that's when you both joined together, right?
Yes,
But
correct.
there's even a bigger story in that because you tripped over Freemasonry by actually purchasing a house here, right? Or a relation.
Yeah, so pretty much we are in our house that we owned previously to the one we're currently in. We're looking to sell it, and the real estate agent was actually the wife of the current master for Stephen Mackenzie from the Pottersby Lodge. And in that stage, we hadn't met before. She helped us sell the house. We moved into our new house where we are at the moment. But our kids were actually at school together. Me and Dad were both there, and it would have been easy 6 or 7 of these new friends, I say at that stage. So after a while, I went to Steve and I said, "Hey, look here.
Who are these
You
guys?"
seem to know all these guys quite well. I've
Yeah,
known you
yeah.
for a handful of years. You know, where do you
We
know?
haven't met them
we
before.
haven't met them before. Where they're from?" And he goes, "No, they're from my lodge." And I said, "Oh, what do you mean they're from my lodge?" He says, "No, from the Freemason Lodge." And straight away, I just went, "Oh, you're a
Right.
Freemason."
Yeah.
And I think Dad was nearby as well. And he was also like, "Oh," because it's something that we've always been aware of and
Yeah, yeah,
intrigued
yeah.
to being
Yeah, yeah.
about Freemasonry and the history behind it. But nothing that's actually really crossed our path.
Yeah, nothing that made you fall into it.
Fall
Yes.
into it, really.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
to have it that's someone that we've had such a great relationship with, and obviously his father-in-law Brian Cliff as well, being part of it. So straight away we went, tell me more. And so we started having the basic discussions about it, and
And the greatest thing about it, what I've heard, because I've been to your lodge as well, I've met some of these young men,
Yeah.
and it was the 4 of you did the first ceremony of joining all together, yourself and 3 other young guys like yourself, correct?
yep. So and all 4 of us were on that day at New Year's.
Which is
So all
fantastic.
4 of us were there. We all 4 realised at the same time that the Mackenzie family, all Freemasons and have been for years.
Yes.
So we all had a quick chat to all these other new friends who were actually just members of the Pottersby Lodge. So we had chats for I think hours. We stood there.
Let's go find out
about
more about it.
So in these early days, and what's the enduring feature that you actually love about it now that you're sort of fresh into Freemasonry? Is there anything that sticks out? I might say apart from the camaraderie, which obviously you have with
Yes.
the others. What's one of the enduring things that you both feel about Freemasonry and what it means to you?
At opportunity, further learning. Like you said, camaraderie, but obviously going into the Pottersby Lodge with a lot of new younger members that have grown. We've grown quite quickly, and it's just it's an opportunity to learn more and to become more as a better individual
Yeah.
and to grow as an individual.
And you explore life because you meet people that you would not normally
Yeah.
Yep.
meet and speak with. So it opens up avenues of thought and
Advancement.
and there's a change, because as I say, in your normal life, whether for whatever reason you would not have spoken to these people or associated with them.
Yeah,
And
true. Well, it is a special bond, and my lodge, my son, my eldest son, is a Freemason as well, in my lodge as well, so I have a little bit of an inkling, but you guys, it's more special because you're going through this whole thing together at the same time.
Yeah.
Thank you for being such a great guest. Welcome
you.
to New Zealand, you guys, and of course in Ponsonby Lodge.
Yeah.
And Lawrence, thank you for being here, mate. Great, we'll see you again soon. Now, rounding out the show tonight, of course, is our regular contributor, Graham Houston. Hello, Graham.
Hey, Barry.
Nice to see you. I believe you've got someone really famous to talk about today.
Yes, a man who was a former Governor-General of New Zealand, who was one of the most popular Governor-Generals that New Zealand has.
I think I know who you're talking about.
John Rushworth Jellicoe.
Quite so.
Known to the New Zealanders as Lord Jellicoe. But we'll come back to about his Governor-Generalship just a little bit later on. John was born in Southampton in 1859, in December the 5th, 1859, and he was born into a military or into a naval family. It's a long history. In fact, 3 successive generations had produced a naval captain for the Royal Navy. When he was born, he was a little fella. He was called Little Jack, and the family continued to call him Jack within the family for many years to come. But what he made up for in size, or lacked in size, he made up for in brain power, because apparently he was a very intelligent guy. There is a story that his mother, to make sure that he got the best education possible, enlisted the aid of a school teacher to give him extra school lessons after the normal school day. And after a couple of those lessons, he went to her and said, "I don't think you realise just how intelligent your son is." There was a friend of mine who took just over a week to solve this particular problem. Your son took 30 minutes.
Wow.
So he was pretty intelligent. So I guess because of the family history, it would follow that he went into the Navy. And he did. He was in a class of about 39 cadets, but he was very, very bright. He topped most things. He was a guy that was very much a disciplinarian, and he tried to steer a very much a middle course. Now, often that's difficult to do, but what he was able to do was not bring any bias or any personal inclination into any decision that he did. And that was largely down to his self-discipline and the discipline that he set. He actually set up a number of rules for the Navy on discipline, because he said that an organisation like that, where men living in such close quarters, had to be disciplined for efficiency and harmony of an organisation. And he himself was extremely self-disciplined. During the Battle of Jutland, this was very interesting. That was a battle that was largely fought on strategy and tactics. Thought it was a bit like playing chess. Interesting that one of the German admirals, I think Admiral Roos, I think was his name, said after the war that Britain were very lucky to have had Jellicoe. For any other person would not have done what he did. They would have taken the bait, followed the German Navy and into the mines and into the submarines. So Britain were very lucky to have him. I guess the only thing that came out, that it turned out to be one of the most short-sighted things that the British government and the Admiralty did, and that was to dismiss him as the head of the Admiralty, as the Sea Lord there. And
That was political, though.
that was as much political.
Yeah.
Lloyd George at the time did not like the Navy, and I think it was as much that. But true to his form, he never spoke out against it. He never was critical. He accepted it was a discipline, believing that the truth would come out in the end. And he knew who were against him and who made these other statements. And it did come out, but not in his lifetime. Okay. When he died, the thousands that lined the street on his last journey to St. Paul, the eulogies and the tributes that were paid were testament to exactly what this guy thought.
So when did he come to New Zealand?
Now, he came to New Zealand as Governor-General in 1924 as the Governor-General. Now, New Zealand thought when they got a Governor-General, he'd be like the other ones, bit starchy, bit stiff, remote from talking to anybody except to the government, but not all MPs or not all people in Parliament. But he came with a totally different attitude. He got rid of a lot of the starchiness and a lot of the old customs and
Pompousness of
usages
that whole thing.
and pompousness that had accompanied it before.
Yeah.
It didn't fit in a modern society. And he went out and endeared himself to the people of New Zealand in a big way. He and Bill Massey, who was the Prime Minister at the time, got on particularly well, and you'll see in a moment just how well. And he went through the country. In Wellington and Auckland, he spent most of the time on official stuff, such as presiding over the Executive Council in Wellington. But when he got out into the rural areas, he'd often stay privately and stay with ordinary folk.
Jersey on, I've seen that, lots of stuff. Yeah.
Now, it is recorded in some of his notes on a trip that he made down to the West Coast, and I'll just quote very quickly. 8 speeches today, 9 speeches yesterday, not sure how many speeches tomorrow. He got out and mixed and talked to people and spoke all the time there. So he was a very popular and well loved. He was actually offered an extra year as the Governor General, but turned it down. He felt that his 2 children needed to have better education and a European type education, and he went back home from there.
What lodge did he join? Because it's
Now, he joined the lodge, the renowned lodge in Wellington. I think it was number 218 back in about 1922. Now, when he became a Freemason, he was very active. He regularly attended monthly meetings, he regularly attended installations, he went to consecrations and the like. And he was the first master of the Island Bay, number 243 Lodge in Wellington. And when he was master, this is interesting, when the lodge was completed, finished, and they went into refectory, there was always a dish that was sent to the lodge refectory from Government House. And that dish used to arrive for the refectory whether or not he was
there
present or absent during that particular
Wow.
month. So
Okay.
he was a very active, and of course he was very much loved and well respected by all the
And his
brethren in
name's
the lodge.
everywhere. I mean, a classic example was today. When I knew you were going to talk about him, I sort of went on to the Google and had a look. And while I was actually on Google, the telephone went, and it was a friend of mine who's just bought a property over in Waiheke on Jellicoe Parade.
Yeah.
And that's everywhere around, isn't it?
He was so popular amongst all walks of life here in New Zealand.
And he was Grandmaster when?
He was Grandmaster 92, 23, and then 23 and 24.
Great.
That he served as Grandmaster at that time.
Well, he would have been a great figurehead for Masonry, that's for sure.
He was a great figurehead for anybody on how to live as a person.
Great.
How to respect people, and he respected people. He treated people with kindness. He treated people, and there's endless cases of him doing just that. He would stop and take time with people in need, people in distress, particularly if they had a seafaring background. And he never even turned down a young boy that wanted an autograph. And even though the people, the powers that be said, no, go away, he said, I will sign that autograph.
The cornerstone of activity of a lot of Freemasons in that
Well,
trip.
it certainly was. He epitomised everything.
What a great choice, mate. Thank you,
Barry.
Graham. Fantastic. Thank you. Well, that's our show for this week. Thank you for joining us. Remember, if you'd like to know anything about Freemasonry, please do go to the Freemasons website, which is freemasonsnewzealand.org.nz, or otherwise just call the telephone number listed on the screen. Until I see you again, have a great week.